She hung from a cottonwood tree. Her wrists were tied so tight the rope had rubbed the skin sore. The only man standing under her was slowly reaching for the knot at her waist. The sun above Crazy Woman Creek was very hot that day. On the far hill, a brown cloud was already moving. It meant Wyoming wind was getting ready to cause problems. It turned the grass yellow and made the air thick like heavy honey. Emily Carter, 23 and strong enough to live through Wyoming, hung with her boots just above the dirt, her torn shirt stuck to sweat and fear. Jacob Hayes stood below her, hat low, jaw tight. 50 years had left deep lines on his face like dry river paths. From far away, it did not look like he was saving her. It looked like he waited for her to stop moving so he could take what he wanted. His hand went up, not to the rope on her wrists, but to the small bag tied under the edge of her torn shirt. Emily's breath caught, her eyes fixed on his. "Don't," she said in a rough whisper. "That is not for you." He stopped, not because he was scared, but because he knew that warning could bring death. Behind them, the sound of horses' feet came through the heat. Victor Lawson and 3 riders stepped out from the trees like they had planned this moment. He kept his hand near that bag, as if deciding whether to ignore her words. Victor laughed from the shade. "Go on, Hayes, see what she is hiding." Jacob finally moved his hand down. Then he did something surprising. He stepped back and slowly raised both hands. Dust swirled around his boots. "Calm," he said, voice flat like open land. "No one has to die today." Victor's men rode closer.
Their rifles were held loose but ready. Emily moved back and forth above him, not understanding why he gave up. Jacob knew something they did not. The trail behind Victor was wide open. Half a mile down that trail, ranch workers were moving cattle toward Buffalo. If he could keep them talking, if he could get them to step into the open instead of hiding in trees, people would see him. He looked up at Emily again, eyes steady. "I will not touch it," he said quietly. This time she believed him. Victor did not wait. Once Jacob's hands were up, his men pulled Jacob forward and pushed him so hard his knees hit the dirt. Emily was finally cut down, not gently, just enough to keep her alive and afraid. They rode slowly toward Buffalo, staying on the open path as Jacob had hoped. Dust from cattle hung low on the horizon, showing other men were working the land that day. Victor leaned from his saddle and looked at Jacob like he was checking an animal at market. "I did not think you would give up so easy," he said. Jacob spit dirt from his mouth. "I did not think you were the waiting type either." That earned him a hard hit from a rifle to his side. He bent but got back up. They did not go straight into town. They turned toward an old holding pen and feed shed on the edge of Buffalo, a place ranchers used during cattle drives, far from the saloon noise, close enough to make things look official later. Emily was tied to a post this time, wrists in front. Jacob was pushed against a stall door. Victor reached for the bag under her shirt. She became stiff. Jacob moved before he thought. One of Victor's men stepped in, and the two hit hard against the wooden rail. It was quick and close, the kind of fight men over 40 do not talk about. Jacob turned the man's wrist, pushed him into the stall, and stopped just before breaking it. Victor wiped sweat from his lip and spoke clearly. "That bag holds a stamped piece of metal from Fort McKinney. It points to a paper that should not exist. The one I paid a lot to make when the army looked away. It will pull me and many big ranchers into the open." Emily looked at Jacob, not scared now, just calm. The bag was not the paper. Victor had not taken it at the creek because he did not want blood where strangers could see. He wanted a clean story, and clean stories sell better in Buffalo. It was something smaller, heavier, proof that linked Fort McKinney to a name that should not be there. Outside,
A familiar man stepped into the doorway. Deputy Ethan Brooks. The way he would not look at Jacob told him things were about to get worse. Deputy Ethan Brooks stood in the doorway like a man who had already chosen rest over right. He kept his thumbs in his belt, badge catching the light, eyes never quite meeting Jacob's. Victor tipped his hat to him. "Deputy, glad you came." Ethan nodded once. "Town has heard noise." Jacob let out a dry breath. Funny how noise only travels when money moves it. Ethan ignored that. Victor explained simply. They were going to Fort McKinney, officially to fix a land problem, unofficially to make sure certain things never reached the right desk. Jacob knew that road, dry stretches, long turns, many places where a man could disappear and be called an accident. They tied him again, tighter this time, and put him on a horse. Emily was put on a horse beside him, her face pale, but her back straight. As they rode north, the sky changed. Jacob had seen that color before. A dirty brown line meant wind was coming. A low brown wall rose on the horizon. Jacob watched it like a rancher watches a sick calf. Wyoming did not ask, but a man could still use what it gave in minutes. Dust rolled over them thick and blinding. Jacob leaned closer to Emily as the wind took away sound. "When I say drop, you drop," he whispered. She did not argue. The first horse got scared. One of Victor's men cursed and lost his hold. Jacob turned his wrists against the rope. It loosened just enough. Chaos was not danger. Chaos was a chance. He pushed his shoulder into the rider next to him. Both men hit the ground hard. It was not clean. It was elbows and dirt and knees to sides. Jacob took a hit that rang his ears, but he rolled, kicked, and stood with the man's gun in his hand. He did not shoot. He used the gun to gain a second and called Emily's name through the dust. Emily grabbed a loose rein, steadied herself, and ran without waiting. They ran toward the creek bed, using the storm to hide, boots sliding on loose dirt as shots rang out somewhere behind them. Fort McKinney was still the only place that could end this. But Jacob knew something now. Deputy Ethan Brooks had not pulled his gun in the storm. He looked like a man remembering a debt he could not pay and a promise he broke long ago. He could see it in his face. Ethan was not loyal to Victor. He was trapped by him. He had only watched. A man who watches instead of choosing is more dangerous than one who shoots. If they reached Fort McKinney, the real fight would not be with Victor. It would be with the law itself. Jacob and Emily rode fast through dry valleys and shallow creek beds, staying low where the land dipped. Fort McKinney appeared on the horizon by late afternoon, low buildings and a tired flag in the heat. Just wood, rules, and papers. The kind that could settle a county fight like men with money and men with nothing fought in Johnson County back in '92. They did not ride straight to the gate. Jacob stopped near an old supply shed half a mile away. He knew better to arrive looking chaste. "Do you trust them?" Emily asked quietly. "I trust papers more than men," he said, "and even that depends on who holds them." Before they could move, horse sounds came from behind. Victor and Deputy Ethan Brooks riding with him. That told Jacob everything. They were not going to talk inside an office. They were going to finish it here, where dust covers mistakes. Victor got off his horse easily, like a man stepping onto his own porch. "End of the line," he said. Jacob stepped forward, placing himself a little in front of Emily without making it obvious. Victor's men spread out near the shed. Ethan stayed back. That was the detail Jacob watched. Victor held out his hand. "Gimme the bag." Walk away breathing. Emily's fingers tightened at her side. Jacob felt the moment hang there, same as when she hung from the tree. He looked at her once, then did it again. The surprising thing. He stepped into the open ground between the shed and the road, raised his voice, and called toward the fort loud enough for anyone close to hear. "I'm the one you want. I forced her into this. The land papers are mine." Emily's head turned fast toward him. Victor smiled. This was easier than he thought. Jacob kept talking, making it sound bad, making it sound true, taking all the blame on himself. He knew soldiers turned toward noise. He knew officers did not ignore loud confessions. He also knew the fort listened to the road because stolen supplies were common in summer. While every eye turned to him, Emily moved slowly toward a stack of supply crates marked for the fort.
Jacob took the first hit without stopping it. He let his hat fall, let his pride fall with it, because at 50, you know a cut lip heals faster than a lost chance. Pain was not new, but time was what he was buying. When Boots began running from Fort McKinney, Victor finally understood he had been tricked, but it was already too late. Boots hit the hard Wyoming ground as soldiers from Fort McKinney rushed into the yard. Victor turned too late. 2 rifles were already pointed at his chest before he could finish his next threat. Deputy Ethan Brooks stood frozen, hat in hand now. The badge on his vest looked heavier than before. An officer stepped forward, calm and clear. "We heard enough." Jacob was still on one knee, lips cut, knuckles raw, breathing steady, like a man who had decided the cost before the fight began. Emily walked out from behind the supply crates. In her hand was not the bag, it was the small stamped metal piece, the one with the official seal tied to land records at Fort McKinney. She did not shout, she did not make a show, she simply handed it over. And just like that, the story Victor had been telling fell apart in plain daylight. Papers matter out here, so do witnesses. Victor was taken under guard, not with noise, not with show, just with results. Deputy Brooks spoke then, voice rough. "I took money," he admitted, "and I kept taking it because I was scared of losing what little I had left. But I am not dying for it, and I am not letting her pay for it." By sunset, Jacob was free. Days later, he stood near the fence line outside Buffalo, hammer in hand, fixing a rail that did not really need fixing. Emily rode up slowly. No ropes, no dust storm, no men circling like wolves, just open land and summer light. "You did not have to take that beating," she said. Jacob set the hammer down slowly. "A rancher protects what is on his land," he said. Emily stepped closer, close enough that the summer wind could not fit between them. She smiled a little, and a Wyoming woman stands beside him. Jacob did not rush words in Wyoming. Some things are said with quiet, because sometimes love at 50 is not loud fireworks. It is choosing to stand still when you could walk away.
And that's the end of the ride. If you enjoyed this story, please drop a like, hit follow, send some stars, and leave a comment. Where are you listening from, and what time is it right now? Thanks for being here. See you in the next one.